everyone, and welcome to another Parent Workshop webinar brought to you by the Hangout Spot. My name is Megan Cave. Justina Balzar and I are excited to share today's discussion about facilitating playdating success for your child. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's get started. In talking with parents, Justina and I have found that worries are not uncommon when it comes to playdating. In fact, parents share many fears. Common themes we often hear include, how will I even find a child to invite over for a playdate? Then, once I find a playdate partner, is my child going to be left out? Is my child going to be made fun of? Not to mention, how in the world is my child going to handle all of the ins and outs of playdating if I have to drop him off at somebody else's house to navigate these complexities all on his own? So, we wanted to give you a moment to reflect on this important question. If you have a piece of paper and a pen nearby, go ahead and jot down the thoughts that come to mind when you consider, what are your greatest playdating fears as a parent? We'll give you a minute. The reality is that 48% of parents feel the same way you do, so much so that they avoid playdates out of fear. Let's be real. Witnessing your child's repeated social failures is a parent's worst nightmare. Parents enter what I like to call protector mode. The common solution, chosen in an effort to safeguard the child, is further social isolation out of fear of continued social failure. What does this look like? I'll give you a few examples. Have you ever gone to the playground at odd hours to avoid the crowd? Or left a birthday party early to avoid what's coming next? Or found yourself stuck in a pattern of playdates with peers who are not your child's age? Or playdate partners who are family members instead of friends? The reality is, parents get stuck in a vicious cycle that can be detrimental to a child's social development. They avoid social experiences out of fear, so then children don't learn the skills they need to be socially successful. And parents' fears persist, and they continue to avoid these opportunities again in the future. And so the cycle continues. The good news is, we've identified 10 steps to playdating success. All of these strategies are rooted in the principles of applied behavior analysis. So if applied correctly and consistently, they will improve your child's ability to navigate playdating successfully. We're going to do a deep dive into each of these strategies. But first, we wanted to address one of parents' greatest questions. Where do I find potential playdate partners? We've identified 3 steps to finding playdate partners. First, investigate. Ask questions like, hey, who did you play with at recess? Or, tell me more about that George you're always talking about. For younger children or children who have communication deficits, asking questions may not yield a lot of information, so you may need to observe directly. Volunteer in the classroom. Chaperone that field trip. Figure out who that little Sammy is who is always trying to hold your child's hand and sit next to her. Introduce yourself to Sammy's parents. Investigating will begin to give you some ideas of potential playdate partners to invite over in the future. You will discover peers who are interested in your child, and vice versa. Okay, so let's dive into each of the strategies. First, keep it short. Less is more here. Instead of focusing on the length of the playdate, focus on the quality. Remember, if your child has experienced social failure in the past, it's better to schedule a shorter get together that is successful rather than a longer one that is not. Pay attention to the amount of time your child can be around peers without a problem behavior occurring. If you aren't sure what the just right amount of time is, request this information from your school. Ask the teachers who monitor recess time or who run choice time in the classroom. If that's not an option, pay close attention to the natural environment. When your child is playing with young family members or at the local playground. Select a time frame for the playdate that is just below the behavioral threshold. If your child can only handle being around other kids for about 40 minutes before some kind of conflict arises where you need to provide support, schedule a playdate for 30 minutes. This duration can be increased systematically over time as your child demonstrates repeated success. But in the beginning, start short. Limit the number of playdaters. With each child that is added to a playgroup comes additional social nuances that must be interpreted and responded to. The complexity of group interactions increases very quickly and can become overwhelming for a child who is still learning social skills. So we suggest starting by inviting just one friend to attend playdates until the experience is successful for both participants several times in a row. Now, don't jump from a playdate with just one peer to a, say, 10-person birthday party tomorrow. The idea here is to systematically add one peer at a time to the group, teaching your child the skills he or she needs to navigate that larger social setting along the way. The more structure, the better. Underscore structure here. If your child engages in problem behaviors when, say, he or she has to wait or has nothing to do, a playdate without structure is destined to fail. Identifying an activity with a defined sequence of events will keep your child busy and increase the likelihood of playdate success. For children who struggle with sharing, structure the playdate around an activity in which each child has his or her own items, but is doing the same thing. For example, a craft activity. Both children can sit at a table together, allowing for plenty of social interaction, but the demand of sharing is virtually non-existent. Now, ahead of the playdate, be sure to gather information about the playdate partner. What does he or she like? What does he or she dislike? Does he or she have any allergies? Information gathering will help identify common interests and disinterests your child may share, thus allowing you to structure for playdate success. Avoid activities that focus on conversation. So, your child does not need to be talking throughout the entire duration of a playdate to have fun. Yes, some language is important, but playdates that are activity or game or play-based take the stress off of language, increasing the likelihood of success, particularly if conversation is not yet your child's strong point. I often recommend movement or sports-based activities to my families. There's a really significant difference between, say, playing tag or playing basketball and hanging out on the couch and chit-chatting. So starting with some of those movement-based activities might be more accessible to children who are just beginning their journey of playdating. Skip the winning and losing. If your child has not yet mastered the art of graceful losing, don't fret. Plenty of playdate activities avoid winners and losers, thus eliminating the competitive contingencies that can sometimes create conflict. So instead of video games or sports or board games, consider activities like arts and crafts and building blocks. Now, you can teach the skills required to handle winning and losing over time, things like complimenting the winner and acting like it's not a big deal when you win or lose. But by eliminating these competitive activities from the start, you allow yourself the time to teach your child the skills that he or she needs to be successful. Practice unfamiliar activities. Once you've identified some common interests and activities that children will participate in during the playdate, practice. You know the saying, practice makes perfect. So simulate the experience from start to finish with your child before the playdate even happens. There's a lot that goes into that process. First, review the rules. Then, model expected behaviors. Role play the activity. Show your child exactly what he or she should say and do during those activities. And then here's the key. Praise success. Most importantly, make it fun. The more practice your child gets before the actual playdate that is exciting and engaging, the more fluent and natural it will be, and the more your child will want to be part of the experience. So, sharing is hard, and sharing our most favorite toys is even harder. To minimize the risk that problem behaviors will occur when, say, a playmate attempts to share a favorite toy, allow your child plenty of time to play with that toy before the playdate even starts. Enough time that your child begins to lose interest. So the comparison I often make with my families is if I eat a ton of chocolate, I eat Hershey bar after Hershey bar after Hershey bar, I'm going to be sick of eating chocolate. I'm not going to want it anymore. So the same concept applies here. Then, proactively store these items in a different play space so they're out of sight and out of mind. Now, if your child has a case of what I like to call the mind syndrome, so they become possessive over everything in the environment when another child is present, consider planning to have your playdate in a more neutral location. So the local playground or the local library, those are all great options for children who have a really difficult time sharing when other peers are in the environment. Okay. Set up a schedule and warn before each transition. Of course, the schedule should be individualized to ensure successful interactions. But as a rule of thumb, we suggest starting with a time for the playmate to play his or her choice of game for a designated period of time, which you will have already practiced with your child. Then transition to playing your child's selected game for the same period of time. The order is really important here, so take note. First, the playdate partner's choice of activity, then your child's choice of activity. Setting it up this way establishes a contingency that your child needs to engage in a potentially non-preferred activity first in order to gain access to what he or she wants to do. And that decreases the likelihood of potential problem behaviors occurring. Then we suggest following playtime with a preferred snack, and you'll know what that is because you will have gathered that information about the playdate partner in advance. And then if your child has already developed cooperative play skills, you can end the playdate with some kind of a cooperative activity. So building a Lego tower together or completing an arts project together. Provide parent support. So you've gotten this far, but your work is far from over. It is not enough to just set up a playdate for the ideal length of time around a structured activity. Chances are your child will need some additional facilitation and support during the actual playdate. So don't leave children alone to navigate play independently. Instead, supervise from close proximity, observing for signs that conflict might be arising, and be ready to jump in and provide that support as needed. Lastly, provide feedback when play is done. So when all of the children have left, take the time to reflect with your child. Provide specific praise on what your child did well. Did they offer toys to the friend? Did they give a compliment? Did they stay in the play area? Point those moments out, because if you praise them and highlight them, they'll be more likely to occur again in the future. Then, identify one skill that needs improvement and provide feedback on what your child could do differently next time. Now remember, telling your child the rules is not enough, right? So before the next play date, it will be important to role play through similar scenarios. Sabotage the natural environment. Create situations on the playground or with siblings in which your child has to practice these same skills so that they become more fluent over time. And then praise the successes, because if you praise them, these skills are more likely to be demonstrated successfully on the next play date. All right, so that's what we have to share with you today on today's webinar, brought to you by the Hangout Spot. So the Hangout Spot is Connecticut's first center using the fundamentals of the science of applied behavior analysis to teach play and social smarts. Here at the Hangout Spot, we believe that all children have a right to meaningful friendships and relationships across the lifespan. We strive to eliminate barriers to friendship and empower children to be socially successful throughout the lifespan using the principles of applied behavior analysis. Everything we do is rooted in research, empirically validated, and proven to work. So we take a look at what are historically considered tricky to teach skills through a scientific framework, which allows us to achieve truly socially significant change for our clients by providing the support they need to develop real connections with others beyond the walls of our center. Justina Balzar and I are the co-founders and CEOs of the Hangout Spot. We are board-certified behavior analysts, otherwise known as BCBAs. We practice the science of applied behavior analysis. In short, that's the science of learning and behavior. Together, we have a combined experience of almost 30 years working with children of many different profiles across diagnoses, ages 3 to 21 years old, and across multiple settings as well. So if you'd like to learn more, join the Hangout Spot community because we're currently accepting new friends. Our website is under construction at www.thehangoutsspotllc.com. Our Facebook page will be going live soon, and you can find us at the Hangout Spot LLC or find us now on Instagram. To gain access to our free webinar content, subscribe to the Hangout Spot's YouTube channel. We are so excited to meet you. Thanks so much for joining us today.